Today I want to tell you a story about one of the most interesting negotiations I've ever been involved in. When I graduated law school, my wife came to me and said, "John, do you think it's time that we could get a new car?" We went out in the garage and we looked at our old Honda Accord. It had almost 200,000 miles on it. It was banged up on every single side. The brake lights hardly worked. We were both working, we were making a decent living, and it was time for us to invest in a new car. So I asked her what kind of car she wanted, and she was really interested in an Acura TSX. I don't even think they make them anymore. It was one of the little Acuras. And so one Saturday morning, I got on the phone and I called 5 or 6 different Acura dealerships and asked to speak to the sales manager. What I told them was my process for buying this car. What I wanted was the best price over the phone, and that was going to be the dealer that I was going to go negotiate the deal with. So 2 or 3 dealers told me that they weren't going to play my game, but I got 2 or 3 dealers bidding against each other over the phone with the hopes that I would come to them that afternoon to try and buy this car. It finally came down to a 2-horse race, and I had one dealership tell me that one of the quotes from the other dealer in this little competition, it was something that was not achievable, that there was no way that they could sell the car to me for that amount. They knew how much that car was worth. They knew how much that dealer had paid for it, and they told me that they were lying to me, that there was no way that I could buy the car from them for that amount. They said that once I got down there that they would have a trick up their sleeve. They would have some sort of hidden fee that they would drop on me to make up the difference. But wanting to be true to my process, I went down to this particular dealership and gave it a shot. We drove onto the lot. I found the sales manager, a gentleman by the name of Marshall, who I had been talking to on the phone. I went into Marshall and I said, "Marshall, here's the deal. Your friends up the road, they tell me that you have some hidden trick, some hidden fee waiting for me, that there's no way that you can sell me the car for this particular price. And so in order for me to feel good about this deal, in order for me to have the confidence that I'm getting a great deal, I need you to take $500 off of the price that we've been talking." Now Marshall looked at me and said, "You got to be kidding. I'm already the lowest price in town and you want me to take $500 off it?" I said, "It's really important, Marshall. I got to feel like I'm getting the best deal in town." So Marshall disappeared for a little bit. He came back and he said, "Mr. Lowry, if I need to take $500 off the price of that car to earn your business, we'd be happy to do it. Do we have a deal?" I said, "Hold on, Marshall. We've got a couple more things to talk about. One is this old Honda. I got to have $3,500 out of that old Honda. Otherwise, I can't make this deal work." So Marshall went and he appraised the Honda and he came back a while later and he said, "Mr. Lowry, your Honda's not worth $3,500. But if I give you $3,500, is that going to earn your business? We want to get this deal done." Now, my question is, as Marshall's saying yes, how am I feeling? Many of you might say, well, you should be feeling great. But my expectation was that this was going to be a competitive negotiation. I had told my wife it was going to be a bloodbath. She was looking at me like I was crazy because this seemed really, really easy. So I figured that I figured that the way that they were going to get me was in the financing. So I went to Marshall and I said, "Here's the deal, Marshall. I've already been pre-approved by my credit union at 4.7%. If you can finance me for better than that, I'll give you the financing business. Otherwise, I'm going to have to come back on Monday after I talk to my credit union." Marshall asked me to fill out a credit application, which I did. He came back a few minutes later. He said, "Mr. Lowry, with your credit, we can finance you at 4.3%. Do we have a deal?" Now, how do I feel? Notice that I'm getting a bit nervous. Notice that this is too easy of a process. It doesn't appear as though Marshall's struggling at all, which makes me skeptical that I may not be getting such a great deal. Now, the problem I had here was I had nothing else to talk about. So I asked my wife to go find an accessories book. I asked her to find something in that book that she wanted. She quickly identified the trunk mat. There wasn't a trunk mat in that Acura. And so I went to Marshall and I said, "Hey Marshall, we're getting close, but here's the deal. We got to have a trunk mat in that car. It's really important that that car have a trunk mat." So Marshall disappeared again off to the parts department. I kid you not, Marshall comes back 5 minutes later. He's got the daggum trunk mat under his arm. He puts it down on the table and he says, "Mr. Lowry, here's your trunk mat. Do we have a deal?" And my answer again, growing more nervous about this particular transaction, was no. And so I asked my wife again to pick something else out of the accessories book. And she said, "We don't need anything in the accessories book." And I said, "Pick something." It was quite a moment in our marriage there. Yet she looked through the book and found the fog lights. Now, you got to understand, we were in Arlington, Texas. There's not much fog in Arlington, Texas. But guess what? We were really interested in those fog lights. And so I called Marshall back and I said, "Hey, listen, Marshall, it's really important that this car have fog lights." And he looked at me like I was crazy. By this time, he was a little annoyed, as you can imagine. So Marshall storms off and he comes back and he says, "Mr. Lowry, listen," he says, "here's the deal." He says, "For me to put fog lights on that car, I got to take that front bumper completely off. I got to install those lights and put it back on. That's a $700 job. Here's the deal. I'll split it with you and do it for $350. Do we have a deal?" And I looked at Marshall and I said, "Marshall, forget the fog lights. Let's do the deal." And I bought the car from him right there. Now, kind of a crazy story, but what is it that I needed to feel good about that deal? I needed Marshall to say no. I needed Marshall to push back. I needed Marshall to give me a sense that I was winning. I needed Marshall to give me a sense that he was struggling, so I had the confidence that he was at his bottom line and that I was getting a good deal. You see, the challenge that Marshall created was that he said yes, is that he was too accommodating in the context of a very competitive negotiation. And so you got to think about this process in a counterintuitive way. Sometimes the best thing that you can do to make someone feel good about the deal on the table is to simply say no. Because when they see you struggle, they will feel better about their performance and will be more likely to cut the deal.